Alright, so welcome back. In this video, we want to talk about Python environments. The goal of this video is for you guys to understand what is a virtual environment in Python. But first up, we need to understand what is an environment, what is a global environment in Python, what are the environments do we have in Python, and it's important for you guys to understand that. Alright, so basically we have three types of environments in Python. We have what we call the global environment. We also have a virtual environment. We also have what we call other environments. For instance, the Conda environment, that is its own environment. We're not going to be touching on Conda environments. We are going to focus on global and virtual environment. And so the first question we need to ask ourselves about environments is, what exactly is an environment? And so I have a resource over here that I'm going to show you here. So this is Visual Studio Code, code.visualstudio.com docs /Python/environments. And so here they define an environment in Python as the context in which a Python program runs. And this environment consists of an interpreter and any number of installed packages. And so if I'm to take you back over here, you can see in the global environment we have an interpreter and installed packages, similar with the virtual environments. They have their own interpreter and installed packages. And so each environment must have some kind of a Python interpreter and some installed packages in there. The question that will arise next is, so what's the difference between the global environment and the virtual environment? And so we need to define what is a global environment first before we even understand what is a virtual environment. So here they say by default, any Python interpreter installed runs in its own global environment. However, the most important thing to note here is that that interpreter is not specific to any particular project. Okay, so if we come back here, although we have an interpreter and installed package in this environment, which we called virtual environment 1, there's a difference between these, which we call the global, and this virtual, because this interpreter here is not specific to any one project. There are a lot of projects, as you guys can see. There's project 1, project 2, up to project 5, right? So this interpreter is not specific to any one of these. It's available for all these projects. However, with a virtual environment, you have to create an isolated environment that is specific to one project. And so that's why we are calling this a virtual environment. If I have projects and programs that I'm running here, if I install packages, they're going to affect everything that is here. Unlike here, if I install or uninstall packages, they are only going to affect this one project that we have. And so that is the difference between a global environment and a virtual environment. All right, so the next question is, where do we find this global environment? So this global environment, you get a global environment when you install Python on your computer. And so I'm going to take you to the page over here, python.org/downloads. If you come up here, go to downloads. That is if you do not have Python already installed on your computer. And so what you want to do is you want to download the latest version. That's what I would encourage you. You can download any other version if you so wish. And so if you download this, you download an installer, and you have to run that installer on your computer. And so it's a straightforward installation. The only thing you have to note, if you are on Windows, be sure to check the box which says add Python to path. Okay, so once you are done, we can then go to our terminal. And so over here, I'm going to go to the terminal, assuming that you have finished the installation. And so what I'm going to do is, let me make this bigger so that you guys can actually see. All right, so what we need to check is, was our Python installation successful? Sometimes you might need to restart your computer, but I don't need to because I already have Python installed in my machine. And so I'm going to write in Python. For those on Mac, you might need to write Python 3. Yeah. And so if you're on Windows, you just write Python and then you can press enter. And so now we are in some kind of an interactive mode. We call this an interactive mode. So how do I know that I'm in interactive mode? You can see these three arrows over here. So it tells me that this is a Python interpreter that is running on my computer. And so I've successfully installed Python. And it tells me the version of Python, the date on which I installed this Python, and some other information is there. And so as you guys can see, I can now start to interact. I can write Python commands in here, and then I can get what we call instant feedback. Okay, so I can add numbers. This syntax is allowed in Python, and so it gives me the feedback that this is 10. I can print some information here. This is allowed. It's allowed. This is allowed. Quotation marks. This is a string, and so it prints this back. It gives me instant feedback. But however, if I pass in wrong syntax, right? If I just say hello, maybe. This does not have any quotation marks, and this is not a variable. I haven't, created any variables. If I press enter here, you see I get a name error. And so I'm directly interacting with the Python interpreter. And so the next question that you're going to ask is, what is this interpreter? What is it? And so I have another resource over here that will give a definition of what an interpreter is. pythongeeks.org/interpreter in Python. So what is an interpreter? An interpreter is a program that converts the code a developer writes into an intermediate language called the bytecode. It converts the code line by line, one at a time. It translates to the end and stop at that line where an error occurs, if any, making the debugging process easy. And so there are some other languages that are called interpreted languages, like Java is also an interpreted language. And so this interpreter here is translating our commands. Of course, the computer does not understand our commands. If we did not have this interpreter, then the computer would not understand what we are trying to say, because computers understand what we call binary, ones and zeros. And so this interpreter is helping us to translate that into the language that the computer understands. And so what we're going to do is we're going to exit this. But before I exit, this environment that we are working in is what we call the global environment. Okay, this is what we simply call the global environment. It's not specific to any project. I can create any number of projects that I want and work with Python and run those Python programs in here without any problems. However, there is bound to be some problems. And so I'm going to take you back to this particular web page over here. And so it says working in the global environment is an easy way to get started. Yeah, you saw that, it's easy. If you install packages in that environment though, in time, it will become crowded and make it difficult to properly test an application. And so in this global environment, we can use what we call the pip. This is installed automatically when you install Python. Pip is a package installer for Python. Yeah, that's what pip means. And so I can use this to install packages. For instance, I can say pip install Django, and I can run installations. I can start to install packages over here. I can install any package that I want, as long as it's not in the standard library, because when you install Python, it also comes with a standard library. There are also packages that come with Python that you don't need to install. However, when you are working on certain projects, you need to install external packages, and so you will start to install a number of these packages. And the more you install these packages, the more it's going to clutter, or it's going to be crowded. This environment is going to be crowded. So at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult to be working in this single environment. And so there comes the need for you to create other environments. And so in our next lesson, we're going to start talking about what we call virtual environments. And you will see why we need those virtual environments. I want to thank you for your time. I think our time is up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so. See you in our next video. For now, I'm out. Bye-bye.